and welcome back. Today I thought I would finally take the time to recreate some of the many recipes that I have saved over on the TikTok app. I usually never go back and look at my saved folders and then just forget about all these cool ideas, but not today. I will also be putting my own spin on some of these recipes, you know, for example, veganizing the meals if I have to, and so on. Ever since I can remember being on the recipe side of the internet, I've seen so many variations of these healthier Millionaire shortbread bites, but I don't think I've ever actually given one of these recipes a try. Let's do it! First, melt down some coconut oil in a small saucepan. In the meantime, grab an 8-inch or 20-centimeter loaf pan and line it with some parchment paper. Next, set up a blender. I couldn't seem to find my blender funnel, if that is the right term, so I had to improvise using a coffee filter that I cut a hole into. It worked semi-well, I would say. Anyway, the ingredients for the base are ground almonds, oats, salt, some syrup, and the melted oil. Blend this until smooth. I also added a splash of milk. And then I also ended up having to go in with a spatula to make sure everything's properly incorporated. Transfer this mixture to the loaf pan, and using wet hands, you're going to press this into the pan and smooth out the top. Put this into the freezer for 10 to 20 minutes. In the meantime, start working on the date caramel. Blend up the following: the soaked dates, some nut butter of choice, I'm going with peanut, some more melted coconut oil. This is my personal recipe adjustment, but I would highly recommend you add in 1 to 2 teaspoons of miso paste. Then I also added some vanilla and some water, which can very well be the water that you use to soak the dates in. And then once you're happy with the consistency, you're gonna add this on top of the almond layer. And then this goes into the freezer again whilst you melt some dark chocolate, using whatever chocolate melting method you prefer. The chocolate, of course, goes on top of the other 2 layers, and then I put this into the fridge overnight. You can, of course, again, just freeze this for about 10 minutes and then dig in right away. I was super happy with those. The only other edit I would make to this recipe is, instead of coconut oil, use vegan butter or a flavor neutral coconut oil. I think that exists. Just because I think I would prefer this to be a bit less coconutty. But still, this was really nice, and I would definitely make these again. Moving on to this cozy soup recipe.
I'm hungry with no patience for measuring, so let's indiscriminately throw things into the pot and call it soup. For volume, I like to add some vegetable broth, and I'm covering the brand because those hoes aren't paying me. Squeeze your bald-headed ass lemons that you got the zest from earlier. And now you got soup thicker than a BBL. Congratulations.
Alright, so first, roughly cut up some onions. Bring a large soup pot to medium heat and add some olive oil to it. Give the onions about 3 to 4 minutes of cooking before dumping in the whole tomatoes. I would also recommend to add a splash of water here, just to prevent the onions and everything from burning. With the lid partially on top, give this about 15 minutes. And then using a wooden spoon, you're going to crush the tomatoes. That part is really fun. Next, add in some vegetable broth, plus some orange or yellow lentils. Now bring everything up to a boil and give the lentils 15 to 25 minutes of cooking. Also make sure to mix here and there. In the meantime, go ahead and prepare the garlic. Yeah, it's basically just oil, garlic, and some basil, allowing that to cook for about 3 minutes over medium-low. She also mentions to adjust the spices according to one's ethnicity. So in my case, if you're wondering, I'm half German, half Arab. So we have a good amount of spice in the front and then the salt and pepper in the back, because that's as wild as it gets when it comes to German spiciness. Anyway, so the spices go in together with the zest of 1 lemon and the juice of half a lemon or 1 lemon, depending on your preference. I'm pretty sure I also added some lemon pits. Next, add the basil garlic mixture. And now feel free to blend everything up, either using an immersion blender as seen in the TikTok. I don't have one of those, so I had to go with a big blender. I ended up serving this with some fresh mint and some sesame seeds, of course, no surprise there. But yeah, this was really good. On German TikTok, I found this amazing looking crispy gnocchi salad the other day. As you may or may not know, I do not have an air fryer, so I had to work with what I had, which in my case is just an oven. So first off, I preheated said oven to 190 degrees Celsius and added a little bit of sunflower seed oil to my baking sheet that was filled with the gnocchi. I also added a bit of salt, mixed everything up thoroughly, and then allowed this to roast for about 30 minutes or until nice and golden brown. As for the dressing, I loosely followed the potato salad recipe from my cookbook, All Day Vegan, available anywhere there's books, check it out. But I also didn't have all the ingredients, so I had to improvise with what I had, which was unsweetened soy yogurt, vegan mayonnaise, mustard, white wine vinegar, salt and pepper. And then I also added some chives towards the end. Now the gnocchi did turn out nice and crispy despite there being no air fryer involved. I would definitely recommend you let these sit for at least 10 to 15 minutes. Just because I personally don't love the idea of a hot mayo-based salad, especially when mixing it with fresh cucumber, but that's personal preference. And yeah, this was really delicious. The only downside to this recipe is that as soon as the gnocchi have fully cooled, they do lose some of their crispiness. This was a post-filming feast for me and my friend Ima. We had the soup and the salad together, which is a bit of a weird mix, but not in a bad way, honestly. I was helping her with one of her uni projects, so I was able to put my food photography setup to good use here. Next up is a recipe inspired by Maya from Fit Green Mind. Might ring a bell. Her pasta just looked amazing, and so I wanted to give this a try, putting my own spin on this recipe as well. Preheat the oven to 190 degrees Celsius. Grab a casserole baking dish and add some whole cherry tomatoes, a roughly chopped onion or shallot. I also added a clove of garlic, plus half of a vegetable broth cube, some olive oil, some vinegar, and instead of the vegan cream that Maya uses, I went for some hummus. I let everything roast for about 25 minutes. In the meantime, you can start to get some salted water ready for the pasta. And then Maya's recipe says to just mash up everything with a fork, but I did have a bit of time, and so I decided to grab a blender, of course, and add the roasted veggies together with some oat milk. You can also use water here. And then that was my pasta sauce. It's really good. It tastes very fresh due to using the fresh tomatoes. So I paired this recipe with the next TikTok recipe, which is for these buttery, cheesy cauliflower steaks. The video didn't give you all the specific instructions, or at least I couldn't seem to find them, but I think I guessed correctly. I first preheated my oven to 190 degrees Celsius and then put some parchment paper on a baking sheet. Next, I grabbed a small head of cauliflower and first removed the leaves before trying my best to cut this into steaks. This part is tricky. It's not guaranteed that you're going to be able to get steaks out of this. It helps to cut them really thickly, so like at least 3 centimeters wide. But yeah, I only managed to get 2 out of it. Put the cauliflower chunks and steaks onto the baking sheet. Lightly brush them with oil, maybe add a pinch of salt, and then put this into the oven for about 15 minutes. In the meantime, finely chop up 1 to 2 cloves of garlic or more. Mix that with some softened or melted vegan butter. And now remove the roasted cauliflower and brush it with the garlic butter. And don't forget to sprinkle some vegan pizza cheese on top. I let this bake for another 10 minutes or so before removing it. And then this is my personal little addition, which is some panko breadcrumbs. And then I gave everything another 5 minutes in the oven or until lightly golden brown. Yeah. I would love to know your opinion about TikTok versus YouTube. That is a topic that I could debate for hours. I find it so interesting. I feel like we're all aware of the fact that TikTok comes with a lot of bad, and I used to be very, very anti-TikTok, but I've come around to it since. I've gotten so many great movie, music, book recommendations from this app. Is it the funniest place on the internet right now? Possibly, maybe. And it is kind of cool to feel like you're on top of things, like you're on top of knowing what is happening in the world, what is trendy, what is funny right now, what are people talking about. So I get that. At the same time, it is also an incredibly addictive dystopian hellscape that we should all be avoiding. So I don't really know. I personally have zero control when it comes to TikTok, and whenever I'm not using the app, I actively have to delete it. I need to force myself to delete it because otherwise I am stuck on there. And I found myself really just using it as a mind-numbing coping mechanism where I'm like, oh, I don't want to have any thoughts right now. I don't want to deal with what's going on in my head. Let me just go on TikTok. I tried doing, the market research and thinking, when you do social media as a job, you also need to be on this app as well. And so I went into it consuming a lot of content in order to understand the landscape of it and figure out where I could fit in. But then I ended up just becoming addicted to it as a consumer and not creating any content for it. Hardly any. Definitely not enough to be successfully feeding this content monster that is that algorithm. So that's why I'm not on TikTok. Not really. I am, but I'm also not. Let me know your opinion on TikTok versus YouTube in the comments. And leave me a little like. Maybe share this video with a friend. Let me know if you test out the recipes. If you do, tag me in a photo on your story. That is always very much appreciated. And I will speak to you soon. Goodbye.